When I was 13, I moved into an old house that I would later find out was haunted. I learned the phenomena I was experiencing wasn't individual to me, but shared by my entire family. These are our stories.
So my first experience, not too long after moving into the house, was one night when I was sleeping in my bedroom. And from my bedroom, I could see out into the dining room where I had a china cabinet that has a mirrored back to it. And I could see a full body apparition walking past that cabinet. It was clearly a woman. It looked like she was in maybe late 1800s dress, a long white dress that came up high on her neck. She had her hair up in a bun. It looked like her hair was blonde. I mean, I could see a lot of detail. And she would just pace back and forth past that cabinet. Um, Later, I happened to reconnect with a friend of mine whose aunt happened to live in that house at some time before I did. And she had some of the very same experiences and did some research on the history of the house. And one of the things she found out was that there was a woman named Delores that lived there with her husband and children. And at some point, I think her husband must have passed away because I remember in the story that it was for a long time just her and the kids living in that house. And so from that point on, we referred to the spirit as Dolores.
So, my first experience was not seeing her, but probably just feeling her around the house, moving into the house, feeling like something was just a little bit different. And I could hear her pacing up and down the hallway. It was like an L shaped hallway, so you could hear her walking. It wasn't like a scary feeling, you just knew that somebody was there. The first time that I actually saw her, I was sitting at home alone and it was nighttime, so you could see like the reflection of the house in the windows. And I just got this feeling like she was there. And so the TV was in front of me, but my eyes kind of just like shifted over to the window and I could see her standing behind me from the couch that I was sitting on. She had like long blonde hair, maybe like a darker blonde hair, and she was in like a white gown, almost like you'd think like a nightgown, but like long sleeve. And I kind of just like closed my eyes because I was like kind of freaked out for a second. But then I opened them and she was gone. But in the moment that I was like looking at her, it was like I almost already recognized her. Like I knew exactly who she was. This was like several years later. I was 14, 15, and I had decided I wanted to rearrange my room. And so I was cleaning it, cleaning things off, moving things around. And it was like I would move my shoes and then my shoes would be back where they were. Or I'd move a candle and it was back where it was. And I started to get kind of irritated because I knew it was her and I got the feeling that she didn't like that I was moving my stuff around. She was never mean or malicious, but she just didn't like me moving things around. But I just kept going, and I had a bookshelf that had drawers on the bottom. It had doors that you could slide open and close. And I kept moving things around, and all of a sudden, one of the sliding doors slammed shut. And that's when I kind of got freaked out. Like, even though stuff had been moving around and whatever, that's when I was like, okay, she's pissed. I need to stop. and I left the room.
I was 5. Yeah, I was like young, like 5 or 6. I was upstairs in my oldest sister's room, and I remember I had a blanket that I always had when I was little, and I was like really attached to it, and I didn't have it with me upstairs in her room because I remember leaving it downstairs in the living room where I was. And so I like told my sister that I was going to go downstairs and get my blanket and I would be right back. And her doorway, like her door was open to the hallway, and it was clear like 1 second before that, like there was nothing in the doorway. And then I told her I was going to go get my blanket, and I turned around and my blanket was like perfectly folded up in the doorway behind us, and nobody else was home. Like, it was so weird. I will never forget it.
So, one of my first major experiences with Delores was when I was 15. I had just met this guy who I became friends with, and I invited him over to my house to hang out. And at one point, we went into my kitchen, and as he was walking in at a certain point, he stopped dead in his tracks. And I asked him what was wrong, and he said that he just felt uneasy and felt this really bad energy coming from the basement, because the basement was right off of the kitchen. And he was just frozen with fear. And as I watched him, I was looking at the doorway to the basement, kind of trying to figure out maybe what he was sensing from it. And out of nowhere from the basement came this huge wave of energy, and it came through and knocked over one of the kitchen chairs. It sent 2 of my cats running because they were in the kitchen, and it came right for him. And as it was coming towards him, it reached me, and I just felt all of the energy go out of my legs, and I started falling. I had to hold the wall to keep myself up. And he told me that he felt attacked, like the energy was coming for him in this very aggressive and sort of attacking sort of way. And I later found out that Delores was not very fond of men in general. But also later on, I found out that this friend of mine was not a very good person, and I think that was her attempt at trying to push him out of the house and that safe space that we had. When I actually first saw her, I was up in my room. I was hanging out with my younger sister. We were kind of just talking. And out of nowhere, she was kind of like, "Hey, look." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And she was pointing up on the wall. And on the wall, from the top of my closet to the top of my ceiling, there was a small space of wall in between there. And I had a window just across the hall from my bedroom door, and the sunlight was shining through, and it was shining on that part of the wall. And I was kind of watching, and I didn't see anything, so I thought maybe she was messing with me at first. But I kept watching, and sure enough, after a minute or so, I saw this perfect outline and silhouette of a woman's face. I could see that she had a bun. I could see the detail of the outline of her nose and her lips. It was very, very crisp and detailed. And I saw her walk in one direction and then disappear and then come back in the other direction. And this went on for a couple minutes. And what I found interesting about it was that she didn't have a typical bounce in her step like people tend to have. It was just floating floating back and forth, a steady floating. And after a time, I did feel a bond or a connection to Delores. I really did feel that she genuinely wanted to protect me. And I ended up feeling this very comforting and positive effect from it.